You got in a bit of a beef with, again, fun with Jordan Peterson about
That's the
this.
guy whose name I couldn't think of. Yeah.
So the topic there was the gender transition and
Hmm.
Dylan Mulvaney. Can you explain the nature of the beef? I mean, it's an interesting claim you're making that most of the people who are concerned about this are conservatives.
Yeah. Just the point is that if you looked at impressions, like when you run an ad, you're curious about impressions and who sees them, right? But if you look at the impressions related to Dylan McDermott, um, I would, like I just said, I'd bet 90% or more were in conservative media. And, I don't know how many followers she had, 250,000 followers or whatever when the Bud Light ad came out. And if it weren't for Kid Rock shooting, guns, shooting at Dylan McDermott Bud Light cans, she'd be long forgotten.
Yeah, but most of the people that care about censorship are going to be free speech advocates. So, like, most people that care about Putin suppressing speech or anybody else suppressing speech are going to be like libertarians. So, like, there's probably an explanation of that. The criticism that Jordan Peterson could provide, I guess he said that Dylan Mulvaney popularized the kind of mutilation
Right.
in his view. They can affect. There's a very serious life-changing process that a person goes through, and when that's applied to a child, it can do a lot of harm to a person.
My point still holds. I don't know how many kids were following, and you can look at the followers list. It's not like it's hidden, right? Back then, if they had 250,000 followers, and now we're on TikTok, um, you know, where he might get 50 some thousand views or likes, right? I don't know how many views, but likes. I don't, I've never seen any evidence that Dylan McDermott influenced people to transition their gender. As he transitioned to her, it was documented on TikTok over the course of a year. And again, when you go back and look at the views on those TikToks, it was, it wasn't like enormous.
Yeah, but the trends start, right? It could be what worries people is for young kids there to be a trend of, especially when you feel like an outsider, you feel not yourself, less than yourself, all this kind of stuff that
Mhm.
kids feel like, that if it's because popular enough as a trend, you would gender transition without meaning to do that. It's just part of a trend. That's
Yeah,
the
but
worry they have.
that's a big stretch, right? To think that all the things that have to happen before you transition gender, right? And I'm not saying kids um, might identify, find it cool or, in the moment, expedient, if you will, to dress up as the other gender. Great. Who cares, right? But to go through the actual physical transition, I don't remember what the numbers were that I read, but I do remember that the latest numbers that came out in terms of transitioning were from JAMA, which is a medical association that said 2021 to 2022, the numbers went down. But the bigger point is there are no numbers for 2023 when post Dylan McDermott. So there's no way to know if the assertion is true, even marginally true. Now, you can easily suggest it, right? But you can say that about any social media influencer, right? Kids are dying because, I mean, it's just like when people accuse Trump of potentially influencing people to, inject bleach into their veins. You can't, that's a big old leap to say that because Trump says it, that people are going to start injecting, and then they find somebody who actually did, and it's like, oh, it must be true. This is a trend now. I'm just not buying it that there aren't enough roadblocks in the way. Now, I'm not saying it never happens, right? And for me, to me, you should have to wait until you're 18 to actually have any surgery to transition. And if your parents approve it earlier, then you can have a conversation with your doctor. But you're suggesting that everybody in that process
Mhm.
to go to transition a minor is corrupt, that the doctor, the sociologist, the psychologist, all the people involved, the hospital where the surgery is happening, the insurance company that's paying for it, they all have been corrupted by this trend. I just don't see that.
Well, not corrupted, but people It's back to the DEI thing. There could be pressure, and we are.
Pressure to operate. So think about all the people who have to be complicit
Yeah,
to do an operation.
but it's not complicit like evil complicit. It's
No,
more.
it is evil complicit, right? Because somebody in hospitals right now, they won't perform abortions because of state law. In Alabama, they stopped IVF treatment immediately after that ruling by that judge, right? The QAnon judge. To think that they're not going to pay attention to the possible consequences of being the hospital that does transgender, that gives doctors operating rights there, and not be aware of the risks associated with it and double check. To me, that's just insane. They're risking their entire business and livelihood and personal relationships for not checking that this 14-year-old, boy who wants to be a girl or vice versa is there waiting for surgery. That I just don't see that.
In America, yes, but if we look at humans in general, and Jordan Peterson, I think, unjustly, incorrectly brought up Auschwitz.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
But if we look, to me, World War II is a very interesting time. It does reveal a lot about human nature, and that humans are able to commit atrocities without really speaking up. The point I want to make is that when you're in this situation where everybody is around you is committing an atrocity, you can be sort of the good German, and
yeah, but
I mean, human nature is such that you can.
But
do
that is
things.
In a time of war.
Yeah, but it's still human nature. It's interesting to remember that.
Of war, when you feel like there's nationalism, patriotism, everything that comes up. Russia, right? The moms of the kids sent to Ukraine who didn't come back in Russia feel certainly different than the everyday Russian who's just taking, whatever information that's available from a unified, controlled media.
Yeah. But, we should remember human nature. It's interesting.
I'm not dismissing human nature at all, but there's a difference. I think that human nature, self-preservation, influences those decisions. There's nothing about self-preservation involved in DEI, wokeness, transgenderism to compare it to Auschwitz. That's insane.
Yeah, well, that comparison is almost always, probably always is insane. Yes. Comparison between anything and the Holocaust.
I agree.
I think there's a name for that rule, but once you bring up Hitler, the conversation ends.
Goes away.